But about Hall of Fame standards in general, and we're going to talk about Golovkin, who is going to get in as a first ballot, by the way, regardless of where this discussion goes. But our standard is lower than other sports. In the NFL, which might be the toughest standard of all of them, and baseball too, I was looking at the top. There's only been about 30 running backs that have ever ran for 10,000 yards in their career.
Oh, wow.
And there's guys in the top 20. Fred Taylor is in the top 20. He's not in the Hall of Fame. Torrey Holt has more receiving yards in his first 7 years than any other receiver ever. At the time he retired, more than Jerry, more than Randy, more than T.O. And he won a Super Bowl with the greatest show on turf.
Right.
He's not in the Hall of Fame. He's been waiting years to get in the Hall of Fame. Ricky Runnin' Waters had 7,000-yard seasons, won a Super Bowl, still holds the NFL record for most rushing touchdowns in a game to this day.
Did not know that about
Not
Mr.
in the Hall of Fame.
Ricky Waters.
Not in the Hall of Fame. Whereas in boxing, our standards have kind of gotten to a point where if you won some titles and you were really good, you're getting in. And especially now that it's mandatory that 3 fighters get in every year. Whereas baseball, I believe, they have years where if nobody made the cut, nobody made the cut. So that, you know, I don't know. What do you think of that?
No, I hear everything you're saying, and man, I really hate like those conversations, those greatest of all time conversations, and those, you know, who deserve to go in now, who deserve to go in later kind of conversations. I don't know. The first thing that came to my mind when you talk about Torrey Holt is I'm like, well, you got to consider who's throwing the ball at him opposed to who was throwing the ball to the other guys. Is, you know, team sport.
And Isaac Bruce is on the other side, who's a Hall of Fame. Marshall Faulk's in the backfield. Orlando Pace is blocking for you. He's a Hall of Famer. I get it.
It's a lot that goes into a Hall of Fame conversation. But when it becomes a Triple G, I just think that, you know, Triple G was kind of a transcending kind of fighter, and I think that's what gets you into the Hall of Fame sometimes. Sometimes it's not necessarily the resume only, you know, it's not only how you handled those guys, but, you know, and I think even for myself as well, my style is kind of imprinted in people's minds when they talk about me, and that style, I think, really in some ways defines boxing. Going after it, going for the kill, you know, being defensively aware and all those other sorts of things. Triple G was one of those kind of guys that when you hear the name Triple G, first thing you think of is how hard he could hit. And then once you start to dig into, you know, his resume and amateur pedigree and all kinds of things, you look at it and you say, oh, he's for sure to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I got a feeling he will be.
Oh, he will.
And it's just, he was transcending, you know? So
I'll ultimately, I got to submit my ballot by next week. So my votes I gave so far were Antonio Tarver, Fernando Vargas, Israel Magnifico Vasquez, and Nigel Benn, because Nigel Benn beating Gerald McClellan in '95, that fight is as good as brutal as it gets, and I rate Gerald McClellan very highly. So for him to do what he got knocked through the ropes in the first round, got up and knocked Gerald McClellan out. So to me, that's a Hall of Famer. And I was tempted to be a wise ass and go, well, since everybody loved this non-title fight between Eubank Jr. and Ben so much, why haven't you guys voted them in the Hall of Fame? I'm over here saying, what's all the hoopla about a non-title fight with the WWE storylines? You guys are telling me it's the greatest thing ever. Well, then, should I give my last vote to Chris Eubank to get in the Hall? You know, I'm being a wise ass.
No, I got you.
But with Golovkin,
I ain't mad at the thought process.
Well, here's what made me at least want to drag my feet, and I'm gonna vote for Golovkin. Is that Michael Moore just got in last year. Antonio Tarver knocked Roy Jones out. Even Roy Jones was forced to lean back, like Fat Joe said. And they almost got into a fight over that. But don't beat me up, Roy. I love you, Roy. But I was heartbroken. So I remember being on vacation with my homeboy, at Laughlin, right? And we're rushing to the bar as 13-year-olds to see the fight.
Oh, yeah.
And we got drunk dudes. Roy Jones got knocked out. We're like, what?
Yeah.
So he made the sports world stop. Forget boxing. You got any excuses tonight? Roy Jones was #1 pound for pound for a decade.
Yeah.
And he knocked him the F out.
Yeah.
I don't care if Antonio Tarver had 1 professional win and had 18 losses. He's got to go
He's
win.
gotta go in.
He's got to go in.
He's got to go in because of what he did. See, that's what I was saying about, you know, sometimes it's just kind of those, I think there's marquee moments that you can have in your career which kind of solidify your Hall of Fame recognition. I understand what you're saying, but I guess for the sake of words, got to be realistic, or maybe others are more realistic, or I'm sorry, not more realistic, but others are looking past that realism into other things and looking at his career. I know he had a couple of fights that were like big moments for him. Yeah, Tarver.
Yeah.
Big moments for him.
The Glenn Johnson fights were big. On HBO.
Yeah.
You know,
those were big moments for him, but you know, are the other people who make those decisions looking at those moments and really taking them for what they're worth. You know, you taking that moment with Roy, and you're like, that's a Hall of Fame.
That's a punch your ticket moment.
That's a Hall of Fame moment right there.
Yeah, you've been in. And Fernando Vargas, okay, you're talking about that transcendent fame. Bro, I went to school in elementaries with kids who had the Fernando Vargas haircut. He was that dude. Like, he beat Winky Wright. He beat a Hall of Famer in a good-ass fight, underrated-ass fight. So my only thing is, like, I just had some pushback against my colleagues in the media who were like, you're an imbecile if you don't vote Golovkin first ballot. I'm like, Michael Moore just got in last year. He beat Evander Holyfield for the heavyweight championship of the world. This transcendent moments.
You can't keep looking past some of those others that deserve to go in because we're looking at this guy and, you know, because of who he is.
My part was, is it really that blasphemous if I don't vote Golovkin first ballot if Michael Moore had to wait over a decade? Emmanuel Stewart called him the best light heavyweight he'd ever seen. He beat Evander Holyfield for the heavyweight title. The George Foreman historic moment doesn't happen without Michael Moore sharing the ring with him. Damn. And then ultimately with Golovkin too, he had 20 title defenses. Let's pause that for a minute. He had 10 of those defenses were with the WBA regular belt. Now, Bernard Hopkins had 14 defenses with the IBF belt. That's in the 90s when the IBF comprises 1/3 of the middleweight title. Golovkin's coming around in the 4-belt era, and he's got the regular belt. So it's really like 1/5 of a title. And he defends that 10 times. He defends the unified middleweight title 4 times. Hopkins defended it 6 times. Hagler defended it 12 times. Monzon defended it 14 times. Those, to me, are the real rankings of title defenses in middleweight. So I got to point that out. And then Golovkin, the sad thing about Golovkin was real prime Golovkin to me was early HBO when he fought guys like Luis Prosca, Dominic Wade. That dude is an all-time at middleweight. That dude would have cleaned up Miguel Cotto, would have beaten Canelo, who was still young and he was in his prime. Canelo aged him out a little bit. And Cotto, Maravilla, Martinez, he would have bodied those dudes. But they're not on the record. He didn't get the opportunity to do it. That sucks. By the time he got real good opposition, he was 35, 34, 36 years old. He wasn't really peak Golovkin anymore. And his best win is a very close win over Daniel Jacobs and beating an undefeated Kell Brook coming up from welterweight. Solid wins. But if you just look at pure who did you beat, you beat better fighters. Right? But Shawn Porter's not a first ballot.
I hear
Hall
what
of
you're
Famer.
saying.
So
I hear what you're saying.
All that said, I know what my eyes saw. He's one of the greatest punchers of all time, pound for pound. He had an amazing jab. The man tucked his chin as good as anybody in the sport, had an amazing chin, intelligent pressure. He's a Hall of Famer, but I just had to say a few things before I mark that X on
And
it.
no. And I applaud everything you just said. Hopefully you guys didn't miss it, man. That was just prime education on what it means to be a Hall of Famer, to go beyond the ring, to go into the numbers, not only go into the numbers, but go into the numbers of past greats, you know. I was just having this conversation with somebody, and then we'll move on, but there's a lot of young guys nowadays, not a lot of young fellas out there that want to speed past everything that some of us have done to, for the sake of words, pave the way for them to do the things that they're doing in the ring today. And people like yourself, myself, we know all of the greats that came before us, and we are going to salute each and every one of them as we pass by them, and we're not going to pretend like they're not there. We're not going to pretend like, well, this is a new era. You didn't have this, you didn't have that, and Fox this and CBS that. Some of those things that some of the greats before me didn't get. I understand all of it, you know what I mean? So thank you for really articulating that.
My only issue with I don't want the history of the sport to the fans to just become Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, Floyd Mayweather, Terrence Crawford, Canelo.
Right.
There's so many great fighters. And in other sports, like football and basketball, they go, man, Steven Jackson on the Rams, Ricky Williams on the Dolphins. These guys that don't even make the Hall of Fame, but they were bad. And same thing in basketball. Derek, a young Steve Francis. And
it goes on and on and on.
So don't forget your Terry Norrises.
Yeah.
Don't forget your Gerald McClellans.
Yeah. Y'all must have forgot.
Yeah.